for being here.
Hi, how are you? How's everybody? I'm glad to be here.
Fine. Thank you for accepting the invitation and be here representing Oracle. I'm going to introduce you before giving you the microphone for your presentation. So our next speaker is Mark Rakhmilevich. He's Senior Director of Blockchain Product Management at Oracle and is responsible for blockchain technologies, strategies, and products. He has broad experience in enterprise solutions, delivering distributed system, SOA, and OLTP middleware, as well as PKI in banks, payments, networks, telcos, insurance, and government for over 20 years as a developer, architect, and product manager. He holds a master's degree in computer science and is member of Pi Beta Kappa Honor Society. Mark delivers customer workshops and seminars, writes on blockchain topics and on Oracle blockchain blog and elsewhere. Frequently speaks at industry conferences on enterprise blockchain and hosts Hyperledger Silicon Valley meetups. Thank you, Mark. You have a very broad experience, and I'm sure our people listening will enjoy very much. I will let you start with your talk. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much. Let me go ahead and share my deck here and make sure that we can see it.
We can see your screen now.
Let me put it in presentation mode here. So, and a second.
Yeah, now we see the presentation.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm going to talk today about the impact of enterprise blockchain and how some of the technical advances over the last few years have actually made it possible. Oracle has been in the space for about 5 years now. We first began investigating the blockchain based on the interest in smart contracts to see how our enterprise customers and government organizations could leverage that technology when it first came out in Ethereum days. And since then, of course, a lot of new capabilities have emerged and permissioned blockchain networks have emerged, which are really being used a lot in enterprises and government organizations and so on. And we have been doing a lot of work around improving those capabilities, participating in the Hyperledger community primarily, and doing a lot of work to take advantage of the open source capabilities, but at the same time, adding a lot of engineering value based on Oracle's background in systems management, data management, databases, middleware, transaction management for many of our customers across various industries. And so I will show you how we try to make the adaptation of blockchain into enterprises easier, faster, simpler, with a variety of new capabilities and tools. And then we'll share some examples of the customers as well that have been using it. So, we'll try to cover both kind of introductory aspects of blockchain, which I'll go through quickly because I think most of by now, since I'm the last speaker, hopefully most people understand the basics of the blockchain. And I'll try to focus more a little bit on the impact and some of the capabilities in the blockchain technologies that make it enterprise grade and production ready, and share some of the examples of customer deployments, customer projects across a number of industries. And then we'll just finish with a few thoughts on how anybody can get started in a blockchain journey and some of the capabilities and tools that we can provide and some of the things that are available for free at Oracle. So let's begin. Our fundamental premise, right, is that many organizations today suffer from the issues associated with structured data silos within an enterprise, as well as across ecosystems when many companies doing business together. We certainly see companies that have multiple systems of record, back office systems, ERPs, what have you, that are not communicating well. And, sometimes across business units or subsidiaries or legal entities across different geographies. And of course, companies that work with other companies, supply chains, banks, payments, regulators, right? No company works alone in this world. They're all part of some ecosystem. So they often exchange data through things like EDI, file transfer, BTB file transfer, or often just spreadsheets attached to email, right? So, there is a lot of sort of data integration, quote unquote, happening by people simply emailing spreadsheet attachments. And that makes it very inefficient and creates high reconciliation costs when your systems of record are unreconciled, when there are discrepancies that impact operations. There is risk of human error and fraud. There is potential expense and cost from intermediaries often involved in the process, lack of real-time visibility, lack of audit trail and traceability when you're dealing with supply chain, for example, multi-tier supply chain and so on. So we believe that enterprise blockchain can replace this vulnerable data sharing with a digital ledger, single source of truth in a distributed ledger context that provides kind of non-repudiation, transactions ordered based on the consensus of the parties, traceability, immutability for tamper evidence, and all of those benefits, right? So, and when you think about the permission blockchain, unlike public blockchains, in the permission blockchain, members are organizations which are invited to join, they're authorized to participate. And, you know, then they have the benefits of being able to conduct business together. And of course, you have interoperability with other technologies. You have high performance, scalability, resilience, all of those features as well that are really key. And ultimately, if you are using blockchain to track sort of digital twins, if you will, of some physical or digital assets, that enables you now to participate in the tokenized economy as well. So, you know, I think there are some really great value proposition for using enterprise blockchain, and I've seen a number of our customers taking advantage of those technologies. So I'll share some examples of them. Here we have some financial institutions, starting with the bank. This was a bank in the Middle East that operates across multiple countries. They wanted to enable funds transfer that usually takes place in 2 or 3 days across countries, across borders, using Swift messages, using correspondent banking networks. They wanted that to be available on a same-day basis, same-day funds availability. So they used our blockchain in order to bypass correspondent banking networks, and now funds are available literally in seconds or minutes through the blockchain connector that integrates the e-channel core banking system, AML, anti-money laundering. If everything is verified based on customer request, a message is put on the blockchain network, and an event is generated in one of the other nodes that are owned by other subsidiaries. The blockchain connector retrieves the payment message and makes it available basically in the core banking accounts and other things of the participating organization. Another bank has implemented the blockchain platform as part of the KYC offering for immediate account opening and user onboarding, replacing a process that used to take 10 days to verify identity and verify documentation. They now can do that in real time using a mobile app that allows for scanning of identity cards, signatures, a video call with a call center, filling out the form, and then being able to actually keep audit trail of all of this on blockchain, creating a digital eKYC profile, which the bank can share with other organizations under self-sovereign control. So users have to authorize its sharing, and that's also stored on the chain. But fundamentally, then multiple organizations can request access, retrieve, you know, if the user permits it, get access to KYC profile and use it then to provide offers and services to the participants in this anonymous network. Another financial institution running as a service bureau supporting multiple banks offers watch list services or blacklist, right? So you often hear about certain organizations or individuals being added to a watch list, maybe by US Treasury Office or others. So banks are not supposed to do business with them. Well, there are applications running in the banks, but they need to get updated with that data. And that process used to take sometimes many hours, occasionally days, requiring downtime and so on. Instead, by using a blockchain, they're able to feed those updates into the bank watchlist system in real-time basis and capture the audit trail of all of the updates being done, so nothing falls through the cracks. Some of the examples in financial services. Other examples in global trade and logistics, government, manufacturing, and so on. One of the largest consortiums involved in maritime shipping, called Global Shipping Business Network, GSBN, has been working with us for a long time. They are responsible in terms of container shipping companies and terminal operators at port for about 1 in 3 of containers around the world, including a lot of those containers parked outside that cannot make it into ports right now, right, because of all of the congestion and supply chain issues. But 1 in 3 containers in the world of maritime shipping is handled by these companies that are participating in this consortium. They have introduced a documentation exchange based on blockchain that allows for all of the shipping documents to be available and updated in real time, replacing a process that used to take a long time, result in a lot of inefficiencies. And because documentation and logistics information is available, they're able, for example, to accelerate cargo release process. When a container of parts for Tesla arrives in port and needs to be released so it can be brought over to the factory, that process used to take 2 to 3 days because of all of the documentation that needs to be put together and everybody has to sign off. Now with the blockchain, that process can take place in 2 or 3 hours because documentation is all prepared, it's all linked, it's verified ahead of time, the signatures are applied, and so that process can be significantly accelerated. They also recently announced the work they're doing with a number of banks in Hong Kong, Singapore, mainland China, around trade finance, where logistics information from this blockchain is fed into the trade finance networks and is able to then trigger payments faster than before, because the banks don't have to wait for physical proofs and documentation when goods get loaded on a ship, when they arrive in port and all of that. So there is a lot of activity in global trade and logistics. Another example in public sector or government, Oracle has contributed and donated a number of capabilities and solutions to US government to fight the pandemic. And one of those systems was a blockchain-based solution for US Health and Human Services Department that enables them to better collect COVID-19 testing results. When they started approving testing devices for use at home, at workplaces, point-of-care facilities such as nursing homes, etc. What you find is that those non-standard environments outside of regular labs did not have a good way of reporting the data to HHS, to CDC, and so on. And so they were concerned about, tampering with the data, improper access, etc. We created a blockchain network that allowed organizations that were test manufacturers, like Abbott Labs, created by Now Test, many other, Loom and others got approved for at-home testing, now can come in through our blockchain nodes and put the test results through an API called on the ledger that now makes it available to HHS and CDC, and then through CDC to various states in the US. And so all of that is now flowing through this network. And there is over 4.5 million test records now on that network since it's been running in production starting about January of this year. Another example in manufacturing space, particularly related to electric vehicles and the batteries, Volvo has made a commitment that by 2025, half of their car production worldwide is going to be electric vehicles. That's a lot of batteries, and each battery consumes around 10 to 20 kilograms of cobalt. Cobalt is being mined in some really unsavory places like Congo. 70% of it comes from Congo. A lot of issues with child labor, war zones, conflict problems, all of that. And so Volvo asked their battery suppliers to ensure they have full traceability from the mining site to ensure it's legitimate and doesn't use child labor and all of that through the transportation, refining, manufacturing. There is also recycling being used to recycle old batteries to get minerals like cobalt out of them. And those recycling processes also had problems with ethical sourcing. So Volvo requires them to do that, implemented by a partner of ours, Circular, on our blockchain platform, 7 deep supply chain, right? That's all being traced now. And I have a little bit more details to share with you on this, but not only for Volvo. Daimler, which obviously runs Mercedes-Benz, found out some of their battery suppliers are coming from the same places. And so they are, they were joining this network. But what they wanted to do was, in addition to tracing the provenance of the minerals, like cobalt, mica, and others, they were concerned about CO2 emissions and the impact of the battery production and the mining it's having on the environment. It's an interesting fact that an electric vehicle is responsible for generating around the amount of CO2 by the time it rolls off the assembly line before it drives the first mile, equivalent to a regular vehicle driven for 50,000 miles, just because battery production releases a lot of CO2 emissions. So Mercedes-Benz wanted to find where it's coming from. And so we were able to work with this partner to enable impact assessment and tracing of the CO2 emissions at all steps of the process to find anomalies, find places where they could impact it. Another car company is Polestar, which is an all-electric vehicle company, joined us recently as well. This network. This is a growing conflict minerals kind of network, and it's going beyond cars, electronics, aircraft, etc. A lot of things that need to be traced regarding critical minerals and conflict minerals. And so there's many other examples. I'm going to come back to some of them a little later, but you see financial services, traceability of everything from diamonds to leather. In fact, leather sourcing in Mexico for footwear and, healthcare, education, trading, food provenance. I talked about electric vehicles and so on, farming. So I wanted to take a couple minutes just to go a little bit into, what fundamentally makes up the blockchain before we start talking about some of the technical advances that make it possible. All right. And so at its core, fundamentally, it's a distributed collection of nodes that maintains a distributed ledger. And the technology relevant to this is how you're going to maintain the distributed ledger in real-time basis in peer-to-peer networks with unalterable records, right? So there's basically a mechanism for multiple parties to interact in the business securely. Depends on a lot of technologies that come from cryptographic world and distributed systems. And many of you in computer science have seen a lot of these technologies being used in the past in various areas over the last 20 or 30 years. What's unique is being able to bring them all together, right? And put them together in a way that creates this distributed ledger capability with cryptography and PKI integrated into it. Now, there is a number of different ways of approaching it. Of course, it started with Bitcoin, Ethereum, but there have been many different frameworks that take those underlying primitives and put them together in different ways. One of the strongest ones, as we believe, is a Hyperledger Fabric, which is an open source project from the Linux Foundation. In fact, if you look at this survey that was done by University of Cambridge, they have a Center for Alternative Finance that surveyed 160 entities in 49 countries, asking what technologies are you using in your production-grade enterprise blockchain networks. 48% responded they're using Hyperledger Fabric, then 15% Corda, which is another technology, and then it goes on even smaller. So, why is Hyperledger Fabric so popular? Well, a few key factors. First of all, it's a platform that is built to be run in a permissioned manner, right? There is no such thing as anonymous participation. There's membership service providers, companies, organizations, entities get enrolled, they get certificates issued, and they participate by signing transactions with their certificates. Of course, it's programmable with smart contracts deployed as application chain codes. It's very scalable. It's built for enterprise level performance requirements. And we have measured in real applications, in performance tests that our customers have run over 2,000 transactions per second. And it enables sharding and partitioning to even further increase the scalability. Because it's used often in B2B type environments, it has a lot of confidentiality capabilities, right? Just because you're a member of a blockchain does not mean that you should have access to all of the data on chain, right? There is still confidentiality around, private business transactions and all of that. And there's many means using channels to segregate nodes, attribute-based and role-based access control, private member collections, a lot of mechanisms that enables that. And finally, it's very modular and extensible, which is great for companies who take advantage of this open source, but then add value like Oracle, right? Pluggable identity management, pluggable ledger store consensus mechanisms, etc. So it's very extensible and we can tailor it, to the needs of our customers. What makes blockchain really interesting, it's sort of that by analogy with database systems, right? It has both the front-end capabilities. You think about traditional web applications that customers run on today, enterprises run on today. You have a web application with a front-end and back-end, and then you have some data store like a database. Well, blockchain can be thought of as a database, as a data store, except it also has a smart contract that almost acts as a primitive, right? It controls the data in the ledger, transactions, validation of the updates, and so on. And then you have your front end, sometimes called DApp or wallet application, but fundamentally the same thing. And so, if you look at an example here, what we see in deploying to customers is typically we start with the blockchain platforms. It includes the underlying validating nodes, right? There is an ordering service that creates the blocks from the transactions. There is a world status maintained. There is history of transactions in the blocks. There is membership service that allows for enrollment of organizations and so on. And then on top of that, you have the actual smart contracts that implement the business logic, things like intercompany agreements, purchase orders, invoices, etc. And at the very top, you have applications that could be existing applications customers use today or new ones that can be developed to supplement existing applications that actually trigger those smart contract functions, right? Invoking them, subscribing to events, reading the data from the ledger directly, and so on. This is kind of an anatomy, if you will, of how we approach enterprise applications that use blockchain. And, so as I mentioned, there is a lot of noise in the press around Bitcoins and Ethereum and public blockchains, which are anonymous. We believe that for commercial organizations, particularly in B2B space and government organizations, enterprise-focused blockchains, which could be private, one company with many subsidiaries, or consortium or federated, like the shipping consortiums that I mentioned earlier, is a future because they're permissioned. There are known identities, known entities participating that are authorized to join. But we're also beginning to see this public permissioned blockchain emerging, where the validating nodes, the nodes providing updates are permissioned and known and registered. But then there is a more broad public access for reading the data. And that's an interesting evolution. I think that over time, what we're going to see is the level of permissioning becoming policy-driven and configurable. And so it will be almost like a dial, right? You could set it to, very low requirements or very high requirements. And in that sense, the line between public and permission blockchains will begin to blur. You're going to be able to have a permission blockchain that allows pretty much anybody to join. Maybe one company has to approve somebody that they do business with. Or you could have networks where 50% of the members have to approve. Or maybe there is just one central organization that has to approve. If you're thinking about, let's say, central bank digital currency that is going to use a ledger controlled by the central banks, they have to approve, other nodes joining. So I think there's going to be a spectrum policy-based of membership controls, and that will blur the lines between public and private, and we're going to see that probably in the next, few years. So what makes up a key enterprise blockchain technology set, right? So of course, a shared ledger for distributed system of record, smart contracts that have the business logic that executed on top to validate any updates, execute transactions, get multi-party endorsements. Privacy and confidentiality for access control is very important. Proof of transactions is very important, digital signing. And then membership governance, what I mentioned earlier, right? Policy-based controls that determine who gets to decide who's allowed to join. What is the policy? Is it majority? Is it, ruled by one? Is it anybody can join? So whatever policies and the implementation and tracking of those steps, voting procedures done on blockchain itself is what membership governance is all about. So those kind of the basic fundamentals, right? In Oracle, we believe in this vision of business and organizational networks using blockchains to significantly optimize their capabilities using trusted transactions to maintain single source of truth. We focus on making it easier for customers to adopt this technology. We actually provide a Hyperledger Fabric-based solutions both as a cloud offering and on-premises. We also provide a supply chain management application on top called Intelligent Track and Trace as a SaaS offering for business users that's built on top of the blockchain platform, but they don't have to actually get into details of blockchain. And we recently started introducing crypto-secure data management into Oracle database as well. And some attributes of blockchain technologies are actually available in Oracle database. So we have like 4 entry points as a platform, blockchain platform based on Hyperledger Fabric with Oracle enhancements and extensions around highly available and resilient deployments, smart contract development tooling, tokenization we have recently added into this, confidentiality management, API gateway, etc., integration with other technologies like database and live analytics, interoperability across multiple clouds. We also have an enterprise edition of this for on-premise deployments in countries where there is data sovereignty needs or customers want to deploy on premises. And then we have the SaaS application, which is intelligent track and trace for business users, and the database blockchain tables, which are essentially taking a page from the core blockchain world as insert-only database tables. So you cannot delete the data, you cannot update the records, you can only insert with cryptographically hash-chained rows that enable tamper-proof verifiability. Just like the blocks have crypto hashes that link them, same thing about the rows. We just add that as metadata, and then optional user signing as well as database signed digest for non-repudiation. The good thing about this is that it does not require deployment of a full blockchain infrastructure. It's available within the Oracle database as a standard set of features available through SQL and all of the standard toolings that many enterprises are using today. And it's a great tool to protect more of a centralized ledger rather than distributed ledger, but still where you need to be able to trust in the data, whether it's financial records or any kind of other records that are important for the organization. Let me run a quick video here to show you a little bit more about the platform and how it operates. And I just want to make sure that I can enable the sound here to share. It will take about 3 minutes.
Blockchain technology ensures timely, secure, and trusted access to the same data. Maintaining trust between organizations through peer-to-peer protocols that update the distributed ledger is crucial to success when multiple business parties come together. But with Oracle Blockchain Platform, all those benefits meet the power of Oracle, the industry's most comprehensive, enterprise-grade blockchain cloud platform. Let's see how it works. Imagine a supply chain involving a producer, a trucking company, and a grocery company, looking to better track products and safety. Oracle Blockchain Platform can provide a real-time single source of truth, recording all transactions for every participant.
Oops, sorry about that.
Real-time single source of truth, recording all transactions for every participant in the network. Each participant's record system is integrated with the blockchain to create and read records on a distributed and shared ledger with decentralized data accessible by all approved participants. Behind the scenes, each party has their own view of the Oracle Blockchain Platform hosting the instance. The main dashboard shows the health of the network, channel activity, peer activity, and partition information showing transactions performed on the VMs. Cycling through the tabs, we see the trucking company has invited 4 participants to the network. Find resources that are in control of the trucking company. View the 11 channels set up on the network that all participants can join, and various installed chain codes. Next, let's see how Oracle Blockchain Platform simplifies the life cycle of product creation to distribution. First, the producer company logs into their separate order management system, or SOR, to create a new product called chicken nuggets, entering all relevant product details. This is recorded directly to the blockchain, synced directly to all participants in the network, and available to order immediately. The grocery can now log in, browse the marketplace, and discover chicken nuggets are available, placing an order. As before, the transaction is recorded for everyone to see. Switching back to the producer, the grocer's new order is ready to be accepted. Then a shipping order created. The trucking company now logs in, sees the new request, and clicks Accept. The grocer can then dive into orders, view the shipping confirmation, and accept the delivery. The timeline of transactions is clearly recorded in the history. This blockchain system becomes even more crucial if things go wrong. Suppose the FDA demands a recall on chicken soup. The producer requests the recall, enters a description, and submits the request, instantly triggering a notification wave to all parties. Each blockchain update has a specific ID that any party can locate behind the scenes on the Oracle Blockchain Platform instance. Approved parties can log in, dive into their channel, and see the functions called for the recall with the same transaction ID and detailed data for everyone. Find out how you can drive innovation, accelerate business, and reduce cost and risk with the Oracle Blockchain Platform.
All right, so you just saw a little bit of an introduction. You saw a little bit of a UI in terms of our platform technology and so on. So we have, as I mentioned, started with Hyperledger Fabric open source. We started in 2017 and released this as a cloud offering in 2018, adding a lot of underlying capabilities from Oracle Cloud Infrastructure on managing containers, identity, events, off-chain data sync, and so on, to basically create this as a production-ready out-of-the-box solution. So it's all pre-assembled, and it can be deployed in a matter of 10, 15 minutes instead of spending days and weeks and months working on the open source basis. It's also open based on Hyperledger Fabric protocols. It can operate with other members. So we have a number of production customers running multiple nodes across Oracle Cloud, IBM, Azure, AWS, Alibaba Cloud, etc., right, based on Hyperledger Fabric. And also on premises, we have an enterprise edition that deploys on premises. One of the key things that is really important for blockchain to take hold in an enterprise is integration with enterprise systems. A blockchain that sits there and just, used for just new applications by itself is not going to see as much value as something that integrates with existing back office systems and ERPs and so on. So we focus a lot on integrating it using adapters from different integration tools in our environments with SaaS and on-premises applications with different ERP systems, Oracle and third-party, REST APIs as well to make it easy to do kind of low-code, REST-based integration, client SDKs, and so on. We've added a lot of enterprise technology in there, like membership governance, fine-grained access control, high resiliency and availability. This platform actually delivers 99.95% SLA, which is financially backed as part of our commitment to customers, and a lot of automated DevOps tooling to make it easier to operate and manage and so on. We've invested a lot of engineering work to add into the open source to make it easy to provision in Oracle Cloud, but also fully automated redundancy and replication for high availability, run it as a managed service, so we take care of operations monitoring, patching with zero downtime, and so on. Identity management integration with Federation to make it easier to manage identities across multiple organizations on the network. Added security and auditability features such as on-chain audit logs, crypto-hash integrity validation tooling, API gateway for integration and for event-driven subscription, operations tooling and console, a development tool to build the chain code, in fact, a low-code development environment to automatically generate smart contracts, so we don't have to depend on handwriting all of the smart contract chain codes, because that takes a lot of time. And the most recently, token support as well that we've added into this. We've replaced the underlying ledger with a stronger capabilities, so we actually have customers with tens of millions of records. They can scale the ledger into terabytes and the state DB into hundreds of gigabytes, because the underlying open source capabilities in Fabric weren't quite up to the task. And also integration with data pump to synchronize data from the ledger into Oracle database in order to enable things like analytics, visualizations, in order to do things like AI and machine learning on top of the data and so on, and make it easier for customers to take advantage of the values that the data can provide. Very easy to deploy in our cloud. If you go into the console menu, you drop down to developer services and blockchain platform, and you can create it. The things that we found when we started working with open source was that it took a long time to get all of the underlying technical resources and dependencies together. So we packaged all of it in a way that automates all of the underlying infrastructure resources provisioning, actual Hyperledger Fabric nodes in different configurations for development SKU, for enterprise SKU, etc., and all of the Oracle add-on components. So you basically go to the blockchain platform, fill in a couple fields, and 10, 15 minutes later, you get an email notifying you it's been provisioned, you have full managed blockchain as a service available. And so making this easy, making it trivial, helping people not to make mistakes in the configuration is really very, very important from an enterprise perspective. We added the management console that you saw earlier in the video, easy way to manage your network channels, chain codes, smart contracts, developer tooling, etc. Full lifecycle management for smart contracts, starting with our developer app builder, and then all of the other things around policies and private data collections. monitoring, visualizations, troubleshooting tools like this diagram that shows the topology view of different peer nodes mapped on different channels, right? And being able to easily manipulate that and add them to different channels. So some of the key advantages that really the enterprise customers like is ability to use, for example, SQL to enhance productivity of the chain code developer. So instead of querying using CouchDB query language and complex JSON structures, you could use standard SQL, which many developers are familiar with. Easy integration with data visualization and reporting and live analytics. Ability to add organizations, particularly those low-tech members that you might have in parts of the supply chain, for example, as enrollments without requiring them to run their own nodes and infrastructure. Many networks today require that participants deploy and run their own node. Not everybody's up for that, right? It's complex technology sometimes. So we could have shared multi-member nodes, but they're still represented as an organization. They get enrolled, they get a certificate to sign the transactions. Attaching confidentiality, access control lists, audit logs, bidirectional integration. None of them are rocket science, but they're all very important to make sure that enterprises can take advantage of this easily and quickly. On a developer tools basis as well, developers are not as easily available in enterprises to do this kind of work. And so we try to facilitate and simplify the capabilities that developers need in order to be able to do, starting with a blockchain app builder, which provides GUI tools and, as I mentioned, uses templates to automatically, or specifications to automatically generate chain code. So making blockchain easy is actually a big deal. Making it easy for customers to start and test ideas. It's an emerging technology, right? So the return on investment is not always clear. People want to experiment, but they're not going to experiment if it's going to take them 6 months and 5-10 people with very unique skills to do something. They want to get in very quickly, out of the box environment. Let me try my use case. Let me see if I can generate some chain codes automatically. Maybe spend, a couple of weeks, maybe a month, 6 weeks, and determine if the use case is actually going to be useful, if it's going to generate value for the organization. And if not, maybe move on to another one. But making it easy all the way through, from deployment to integration, security management, operations, and so on, without requiring a PhD in blockchain, and ultimately evolving and adding new nodes and new members. We see customers often start with 2 or 3 nodes in the permission blockchain, and then they scale out after they've done the initial rollout, and they add more nodes. So making it easy to add, whether it's Oracle or non-Oracle nodes, other Hyperledger Fabric nodes, we try to make it very easy for them. And that was a big thing. Then we said, all of this is great, but now customers still struggle with the application. So we focused on creating a portfolio of partner solutions around different verticals, and then also low-code development, looking for people who want to build custom solutions, right? And there's a blockchain application builder, which now can automatically generate smart contracts out of the box based on the specification, and includes tokenization support as well. We have fungible tokens available and non-fungible tokens coming out next on our platform. We recently had a Hyperledger Fabric member webinar, which is available online. If you go to hyperledger.org, on the events, you will see a recording that you can access. It talks about how to add tokenization to Hyperledger Fabric. The development tooling and the processes involved, we try to fit into, again, the life cycle. So you start with a specification file where you can, in a declarative manner, define the data assets you're going to manage. It could be a document description, it could be a token, it could be other things. And we will automatically scaffold the project, generate the code. You can add custom methods, you can deploy and test locally. You can run debuggers in the Microsoft Visual Studio Code extensions, and then ultimately package and deploy this on chain, either using our Enterprise Edition or cloud. This was really a great advance, I think. A lot of customers still struggle with developing chain code. You can start instead with the specifications that declaratively defined. In this case, we have a token used for a grant, like a government grant system. And we define the parameters and the attributes and verifiability of it, validation rules. based on a token taxonomy framework. We then generate the actual code automatically, and that automatically exposes APIs that customers can invoke to start interacting with the system. And we think this is really an important advancement. Hyperledger Fabric by itself does not have a built-in token mechanism, unlike other networks like Ethereum or Quorum. But we believe it's important for many use cases and as enterprises. So we've added this, and we used token taxonomy framework standard TTF that defines the kind of meta models around token specifications such as fungible, non-fungible, different behaviors, mintable, etc. Custom properties can be added like exchange rates, etc. And then we can automatically generate this. And we generate the entire life cycle for tokenization. So there is a core SDK and then wrapper functions around it that provide capabilities to manage the token system, initialize, create accounts, add roles, and then do the basic minting and transfer and burning operations. And of course, it has full built-in role-based security, so that only authorized organizations can do minting and burning and act as escrow notaries. We've actually integrated this as a sample in our console as well. So if you have access to Oracle Blockchain Platform and the developer tools and the samples, you'll find this as a built-in sample. You can install it, and then you can play with actual functions directly out of the box. The Enterprise Edition I talked about earlier for installation as a software appliance for customers that want to run on premises or operate in countries where they have data sovereignty requirements and so on, and that's deployed basically through a platform manager. Again, we created a control plane, like in a cloud offering, where you can manage, instantiate, patch, update, and provide all of the management features, and then you can deploy the individual instances across data centers. One of the things we focused on from day one is interoperability. When we released our product in 2018, customers were asking about interoperability, but nobody was really doing anything about it. We made sure that you can take Oracle nodes and open source nodes and other Hyperledger Fabric nodes and join them together. And we have customers now in production doing that. So single ledger spread across multiple clouds, multiple vendors for full decentralization, and we have customers in production doing that. There is also interoperability at the level of third-party smart contract frameworks. In Hyperledger Fabric, you can build your own smart contracts in Go, Java, JavaScript, but you can also, in our platform, bring Solidity smart contracts and integrate them in. We support an Ethereum virtual machine on top of our nodes, and then that can run Solidity. Also, digital assets DAML is supported as well. We also have cross-ledger transaction integration and interoperability between Hyperledger Fabric and Oracle Blockchain Platform, but also things like Corda, Quorum, Ethereum. This is a partner-based solution called Overledger, which provides orchestration across multiple blockchain networks. And the solution we recently demonstrated in the Hyperledger seminar that I mentioned. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I want to quickly show you some of the customer examples, right? We have over 250 customers who've been successful on our platform, financial services, supply chain, some public sector, and so on. So this is the bank that I mentioned earlier, right? This is a bank that used to take 2 to 3 days for funds transfer across border. Now they have same-day funds availability, literally in seconds or minutes across this network with full audit trail. This is the KYC that I mentioned, an application, a mobile app that allows them to collect the data stored on blockchain for security, immutability, etc., and also all of the user approvals who can access this data. This is a great tool to achieve financial inclusion and remove friction in the lot of current onboarding processes. Can be used for individuals, can be used for bank accounts, etc. I mentioned the Maritime shipping consortium. This began by a partner of ours called CargoSmart that created a document exchange for a lot of companies involved in maritime shipping, right? Carriers, forwarders, inland, terminals, shippers, etc. They have created a way of tracking all the documentation on blockchain with non-repudiation. And then later on, they have worked with participants to create a consortium so that it's a democratized, decentralized consortium. Right now, I believe there is 9 founding members involved that are participating in this. India recently rolled out in the Ministry of Commerce a secure logistics document exchange to facilitate export-import business. Again, using our blockchain, they are able to enable they can enable carriers, banks, exporters, importers, customs, and agents to exchange in real time 36 common documents, the bill of lading and the like. This used to take place as a physical document with a lot of problems and costs and delays and fraud. Instead, they're now using this logistics DigiLocker with e-signing capability to exchange the documents online in a secure manner. And this facilitates, of course, for banks, full trade finance capabilities and speeds up trade documentation. Decathlon, which is a sports retailer, a big chain of stores, particularly in Europe, that sells a lot of sports goods, right? They have partnered in each country they operate with sports providers, clubs, training facilities, etc., to be able to use tokens between the store. So you buy a tennis racket in the store, you get credits, you go to a tennis pro for some lessons, you could use those credits in part to pay for the lessons. Very simple solution, but very effective. A manufacturing company that has a lot of materials flowing through the certified supply chain. It's a patented fabric for maintaining body temperature to concentrate. They have some chemicals, volcanic sands involved, master batch. Third parties make fiber, yarns, and ultimately fabrics and garments. So they track inventory. They used to do this with spreadsheets. Now they track inventory across this entire ecosystem, and the royalties coming back, they get paid by the royalties, are all tracked on blockchain as well. And we track the contribution each particular component makes to the next intermediate product. And ultimately, you can click on a particular garment and see all of the history of all of the components and materials that went into it, which fabrics, which yarns, which volcanic sand batches, etc. Here's the circular companies that I mentioned that Volvo's been working with, and Mercedes-Benz and Polestar, on tracking the critical materials that go into batteries. They've started working with us in 2018. They've created a solution, and then they basically took CATL and LG Chem, which are two main battery producers around the world, and enables them to track the entire supply chains. They have all of the capabilities to go from the origin to track the identity of who's actually supplying it all the way through to manufacturing and final assembly, and provide the traceability around basically the digital twin and the blockchain, but also all of the physical aspects of this being tracked. Manufacturing companies that use a lot of computer-controlled machines, CNC machines, which are very expensive, they're collecting granular machine data on blockchain from multiple suppliers to offer manufacturing as a service for predictive maintenance analytics based on that data. They can use the data to fine-tune machine operations, and the data is coming from multiple factories, multiple suppliers with a reward system, again, using our tokens. This is a metals manufacturer that has a lot of outsourced manufacturing. So they create metal-based products, aluminum and steel, and then there are companies called tollers that finish them up for specific customer requirements. Very messy documentation process to track all of that. Now it's being done on blockchain in India, and all of it is now being visible and transparent on the blockchain. Food provenance, extra virgin olive oil from Italy, a lot of it is fake. So this company, Certified Origins, wanted to ensure they can trace this end-to-end. They source olives from over 100,000 farms, and they produce the oil in 900 mills. So the entire processes around purchase orders from clients, stores and warehouses, job production and oil mills operation data, and then the shipments are all linked together on the blockchain. So the client ultimately can scan the bottles, the consumer going into the store can buy the bottles, they can scan it, and they can then from the app get full traceability, visibility across all of the different organizations involved that touch the oils that went into that bottle. In the fashion world, sustainability management and brand trust are big issues. So there is this company, Retrace, based in Germany, that maps out supply chains for fashion companies, right? Clothing, shoes, etc. And they're able to go very deep to map out the supply chain. Those supply chains are very dynamic, so they provide mobile apps for scanning. And then this solution enables full traceability then between suppliers and manufacturers down to individual employees for handmade products. And now to consumers that can then scan the product using their apps, and that increases customer returns. The brands that use them have seen 20% increase in returned customers, right? So there is, for example, handmade shoes, Kano shoes, from Mexico, in fact, and they trace individual employees. Diamonds, I talked about earlier, tracing diamonds, where they came from, ensuring they're not conflict diamonds. Unique identifiers being scanned. There's around 40 different data points, and all that information is available, entire ownership transfer chain, who worked on it, if you go to a store to buy a diamond at a retailer. Pharmaceutical industry, cold chain and anti-counterfeit drugs tracking in India. A lot of fake drugs in India, and they wanted to really make sure they can track from manufacturer all the way to the retail shop. So they've implemented our blockchain to trace all of the touch points, handoffs, as well as IoT data that's coming from the delivery vehicles, from trucks, temperature controls, because a lot of drugs have to be maintained in cold temperature, location center, geolocation. And so all of that information, together with integration with manufacturing ERP systems, inventory systems, point of sale systems, CRM systems, all of that's tracked on the blockchain, and they have full end-to-end visibility. Turning the tide on plastics. This is a company in Greece that wanted to facilitate better traceability of pollution. This is basically collecting plastic waste from Mediterranean coastal areas and beaches. It is then being used in recycling and manufacturing of new products, and consumers ultimately who buy them can scan the tags, and they can see the entire history, who manufactured it, where it was recycled, what beach it was collected from. So they see exactly what went into their products. And there are certification programs that this company, Kipsy Blue, established for all of the participants, right? There's a number of companies across Europe in particular that are involved. Education records, right? It's a pretty common use case. This is done in China for healthcare workers who need to maintain ongoing training. They have to attend certain hours of training every year, and those certification records are being tracked. A lot of vendors across many industries, right? This is partners that have built solutions. So you see a lot of different use cases across the enterprise blockchain. There are some partners here. The last one I want to touch on is this partner called Zua, which has implemented an NFT marketplace build capability as a low-code platform where companies can come and build NFT marketplaces on top of our blockchain platform. There is a company that's doing live event streaming. Headline artists, popular artists, can co-create work with their fans, mint as NFTs. Another company that can take video from sports events, sports moments, concerts, and allows the fans to personalize it and then mint NFTs. And then another company we're working with, which is a large news organization around the world. They have archives of a lot of content, and they also have freelance contributors who contribute photos and articles and data, and they want to enable them to essentially use this marketplace to mint NFTs. So Zua provides, the user-generated content type minting, as well as operator minted marketplace for companies that have their own IP, and they want to enable NFT minting, whether it's rights in media or potentially, like I said, entertainment, sports and many other areas. There's a couple of closing thoughts, right? How to get started. If you're thinking about enterprise blockchain use cases, you have to ask some questions about processes in business processes that cross some kind of organizational boundaries or cross divisional boundaries, where there are cross-system discrepancies, less than full trust among the parties, maybe intermediaries that get in the way because of cost to risks. Maybe there is a lot of issues with batch updates where real-time updates are needed, lack of traceability, maybe for regulatory needs, for audit trails or other things, and lack of visibility into multi-party processes or transactions. And from there, then you can determine which of this type of blockchain deployments will best suit your purposes. And then you can begin to start with a platform and develop the overall flows. Oracle has a lot of capabilities to help our customers and partners. We have what we call this, making the blockchain journey easy program, starting from discovery, understanding the need, sharing the use cases relevant to the industry, doing some design work, and ultimately building a pilot or prototype with the customer. And all of this literally in days, right? We have a lot of resources around the world, starting with our industry and product management teams down to solution engineering consultants and partners around the world. So if you want to learn more, you can visit our pillar page and developer page here. or you can try this hands-on. You can get a free cloud trial with 30 days available. You can create an account, provision an instance, deploy some sample chain codes, and interact with them. There is more information on our blog. Also, we have a news page. There is great videos, and you can come and visit the pages for more content as well, available for both our cloud offering and OBP Enterprise. So happy to take any questions at this point. But hopefully you've seen a little bit of what it takes to build an enterprise blockchain that many enterprises can use across a number of different use cases and industries.
Thank you very much, Mark. It was a very nice presentation, because we have been having a lot of questions about applications in real life about this technology, and I think you already covered a lot of these applications. I hope that people have constantly these questions are still connected here with us. So I think that was very, very nice and helpful, because you cover a big growth of the market that is using that. So now
it's not just cryptocurrency, it's not just financial services, right? There is a lot of applications across many industries.
And I have a question in that sense to make a little more clear to the people who is listening to us about this difference, because you talk about mainly about Fabric, a per ledger Fabric that is a permissioned blockchain, and I think two specific things that you mentioned, and I think it will be interesting to get into a more detail, is the fact that in this type of blockchains you don't have to pay anything, like in the open one.
There is no gas fee, there is no transaction fees, exactly.
So that's why I guess many of these industry are interested on doing that, because there is not a cost involved in the sense of the cost of the blockchain. And the other thing is that you mentioned that you have the ability to encrypt data if you need it, which in open blockchains, in public blockchains, is not something that is happening. And the control of who is accessing, right? Like basically an authentication service. I don't know if you can give us a little more about it. Meanwhile, Victor, give us some questions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, access control is really important, right? I mean, if you're thinking about the data in a B2B environment, if you want to do some trade finance work or, shipping document exchange, bill of ladings, purchase orders, invoices, you're not going to share that with like 50 other companies, right? You only want to share that with those companies that are directly participating in that particular document, involved in some way, right? So we provide the ability to use private data collections. It's sort of like a side chain. If you think about it in the public world, you would have a side chain between the parties to exchange that and side database, and then the hash would get put on a public chain, but it's a one-way hash. It doesn't disclose any data. Well, we have that built in our blockchain platform, Hyperledger Fabric, the side chain and the main chain, there's different channels, right? So you could have a channel, and then you have private data collection where only the hash of the data that goes into private databases goes onto the channel ledger itself. That's one mechanism. There is also access control mechanisms. You can define properties in the certificate. So everybody enrolls, you have a certificate. You can add attributes that define your role or other access properties or department or whatever you want. And chain code can retrieve that based on the transaction coming in. It's signed, right, by the user. So we can retrieve the certificate, retrieve the properties, and apply them for some kind of a role-based or attribute-based access control mechanism. So we created a lot of capabilities to make it easy to implement access control and define it and track it on chain. So as access changes, you add somebody or you change the level of access, that's also a blockchain transaction. And so there is full audit trail of any changes to the access control mechanism as well. And that helped to enable a lot of B2B type applications.
Thank you very much. I don't know, we have one question, and I don't know, Victor, if you can start looking for some. Carlos Estrella is saying, now that Oracle is offering blockchain as a service, how valuable are certifications offered by the Blockchain Council and other institutions? Is Oracle offering blockchain certification in order to master BAAS? What professional profile is the blockchain industry looking for? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So, blockchain as a service certainly simplifies a lot of the work involved in taking, all of these open source packages and making them work together and so on. So we felt that this was something we could contribute. and make it easier for our customers. But there is still value, I think, from a certification perspective, not so much in how the infrastructure is put together, but how to use it and understanding the principles associated with, what we call multi-party applications, right? The requirements around building smart contracts, endorsement policies, how to secure it. And those are still valuable, right? And Oracle is working. We don't yet have a blockchain certification, but we are actively working on it. And I expect it will be available before the end of the year through Oracle University. We have classes available today. So you can actually, if you go to Oracle University, or you can just ping me and I can send some links on the trainings that's available. And certification hopefully will be available as well by the end of the year.
Yeah, that will be great because we have having a lot of questions about where to start and what we can see. And I think Oracle has a very big number of resources. If you can share with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, some of the pages here I mentioned, there is overall page on, Oracle comes with blockchain, which has a lot of content around use cases and the products. There is a developer site, microsite, which has a lot of developers. There is a developer ebook, like 50-page ebooks that you can access. It goes through a lot of details. Great stories on the blog and news if you want to look for use cases, some videos on YouTube, full documentation available as well. And, the best way, just go to cloud.oracle.com or oracle.com/cloud, free trial, sign up. You have $300 credit, 30 days to play with this. And you can learn something, you could explore, you could see how easy it is. You can download the developer tool and, start generating some chain codes as well.
Excellent, thank you. We have now another question, and you tell me, Victor, if we still have time. Given that it's Hugo Rafael Ibarra Alarcón says, given that blockchains sound like a great way to track the supply and production change of products, do you think legal regulation based on blockchains will be a good way to make sure companies produce things ethically?
So I think there is a lot of regulations that are now demanding greater degree of traceability. I know certainly in the pharmaceutical industry, that's already coming. Now, they're not saying specifically you should do it on a blockchain, but everybody's pretty much who's doing it on blockchain because it's really a good match technically to those traceability requirements. So pharmaceutical industry is already towards that. There is DIXA in the US, there is Pharmaledger.eu Consortium in Europe and other countries doing that as well. Food provenance traceability, US Food and Drug Administration has some rules published. They're getting finalized for greater traceability between the different links in the food supply chain so they can better handle recalls. And we're working with some companies that are looking at how best to comply with those regulations in the next year or two. Parts in aircraft industries, right? In aircraft manufacturing, particularly a lot of reused parts. In the aircraft business, it turns out that parts get reused sometimes, 5, 6, 7 times, different airframes, airplanes. A lot of certification requirements to trace in that used parts market, if you will. Oil and gas, that's another area where there is regulations that require traceability in a great deal. So I do think that greater emphasis on this and in ethical sourcing, of course, conflict minerals, critical minerals, issues with child labor, CO2 emissions, all of those are the kind of issues where blockchain can provide some unique capabilities. And, as companies around the world respond to those demands more and more, they're going to leverage blockchain, I think, to a large extent.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe we have time for another more question, and I think we can close.
There is one hand raised. Oh, no, not anymore. Okay. Then I have a question from the registration form. This is from Cosme Damien from the enterprise Deloitte. And the question is, what has been the most difficult challenge to implement blockchain in LATAM?
In Latin America, yeah. I think I would say that sorting out organizational and legal details of bringing companies to work together.
Yeah.
If there are pre-existing consortiums, pre-existing business relationships, it's easier. But often customers who have some level of relationship have to agree on sharing some data and using some common infrastructure, maybe supporting certain standards around smart contracts, etc., and getting people to see the way towards coming to that agreement, I would say, has been probably the hardest thing. Not only in Latin, I think around the world. We have seen a lot of success where you have a conglomerate with multiple business units or subsidiaries pulling together to use blockchain. We've seen occasionally in financial services, there is banking networks in Brazil and some other countries that are already using blockchain. And so it's easier for them to say, okay, one more use case, one more application. But bringing people to do this who are not accustomed to working together in a distributed application manner, where there is a little bit more structure than there used to be, I think that's, probably the big issue. It's not technical. It's just, business relationships and trying to codify how they work together in a way that all sides can accept, right? And align incentives and make sure everybody sees the value to their participation.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
In that sense, regulators is a great forcing function.
Yeah.
When the government or some other agencies say, you need to do this, then that becomes basically just, you have to do it, no choice.
Yep. Okay, and we have another question. If you can still.
Yeah, sure. Happy to stay a few minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Next question is about financials. Yes, we know blockchains go beyond, but it is still one important topic. Gustavo Emir is a bachelor student, and he asks, in your opinion, how likely is it that we will leave the centralized banking systems and the world economy will be ruled by blockchain?
Well, I think what you're going to see is that central bank digital currency is going to start emerging in the next 2-3 years in some countries and more countries. We're actively involved in a few CBDC projects. And I think that it will take the capabilities and the benefits of digital currencies combined with the central bank blessing and legalizing under central bank supervision those systems for that to happen. The non-central bank regulated digital currencies obviously are very popular. There are a lot of issues, as we all know, a lot of bad things happen on them. Good things happen too. But as long as there is full anonymity and lack of capability to enforce anti-money laundering or tracking funding for ransomware or terrorism or other things, most organizations and most companies will not really adopt that, right? They can provide, banks can provide custody for their customers who want to do cryptocurrency, but banks themselves are not going to operate in cryptocurrencies. They'll just give you safety deposit box, maybe electronic safety deposit box as custody solution, but you do your own thing and you're responsible, for your own trades and all of that. So central banks coming into it and saying, okay, we're going to create similar digital currency, mostly anonymous, but with certain rules. Like, in US, for example, if you do a transfer over $10,000, the bank has to report it. So similarly, in the CBDC systems, there could be rules that say, okay, you have, pseudonymity and everything's private, but if you hit that, $10,000 limit, or, more than 50 transactions a day to the same account, or, somebody happens to be on a watch list, whatever, we have to be able to de-anonymize it and then apply AML rules and all of that. So when you can combine that with privacy for 99.9% of transactions, then you have a system that central bank can live with, can provide oversight and approval, and users, I think, will be happy to be able to use digital currency, for payments and such without depending on expensive fiat, whether it's credit cards or anything else, right? because digital currency will be by definition much less expensive and can be widely adopted to all kinds of use cases.
Okay. Yeah, we are totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, once again, our time is up. Mark, we really appreciate your participation in this seminar. All these talks undoubtedly motivate our students and academics to learn more about this emerging area of computing. Thank you very much for
Sure,
accepting.
thanks for inviting me. Appreciate participation. Muchas gracias.